When people think about the Super Bowl, they think of, well, food, music, tailgating, betting, and football. Yep, they even play football. But the game is actually a fairly modern event. The first Super Bowl was actually in 1967, making it significantly younger than the Stanley Cup, the World Series, the World Cup. In order to understand the Super Bowl, we have to quickly look back at the history of football in America. American football to most of the world. The NFL started in 1920, but the league was very different back then. For one thing, it didn't have a monopoly. There were a bunch of competing leagues throughout the decades. In fact, even in recent memory, we've had a bunch of leagues. Look at the new XFL league, owned by The Rock. Hold up. Did you know that The Rock played football? Yup, for the University of Miami. And the practice squad of the Calgary Stampeders in the CFL. Or the USFL of the 1980s, which actually was able to get a whole bunch of top-notch players. But it flopped. The largest of those competing leagues, though, the American Football League, i.e. the AFL. It became a staunch rival of the NFL in 1960, before combining officially with the NFL in 1970. The teams in the AFL, the Kansas City Chiefs, the Buffalo Bills, the Boston Patriots, the Raiders, the Chargers, and others. The rise of the AFL in the 1960s was a threat to the NFL, so it was decided to have the champions of each league head off against each other in what would be called, wait for it, the AFL-NFL World Championship game. Yep, it wasn't called the Super Bowl until 1969, and the Vince Lombardi Trophy wasn't named that until 1970 after the death of Lombardi, who was the coach of the winning team in the first 2 seasons. When the championship started in 1967, it wasn't exactly the same as it is now, but it was large. Here are some photos from the first Super Bowl. You have to understand, it wasn't the ratings boon it is now. It wasn't known for its halftime commercials. It was known for football. Imagine that. The halftime shows we know now are actually a new feature. Prior to 1991, the Super Bowl halftime shows were done primarily by university and college marching bands, which is pretty different than now. Actually, quite a bit different. In 1991, the Super Bowl presented New Kids on the Block, the boy band before the Backstreet Boys for some of you. But it wasn't until 1993 that the NFL pushed the halftime show into the public sphere, with Michael Jackson's iconic performance at the Rose Bowl. The halftime performers, though, actually aren't paid. These days, you actually have to pay to play the halftime show. The Weeknd paid somewhere between $10 and $17 million to play it recently. Other famous performances? U2, Rolling Stones, Prince, and of course, Janet Jackson and Justin Timberlake with their accidental nudity in 2004. And commercials? Holy cow, we all know a bunch of them. Like this one, and that one.
Yo. What's that? What's that?
Which Super Bowl halftime ads do you remember?